And I was walking in front of the U.S. Embassy, which I didn't realize at first. I just thought it was a building. And all of a sudden I heard this crack, and her leg had fallen off on the sidewalk. But I didn't know what the crack was at first. And I looked around, and here are all these guys pointing their guns at me from the U.S. Embassy. They thought I had a firearm, or they thought I had a bomb or something, and they didn't know what the crack was either. They certainly weren't expecting a skeleton leg to be on the sidewalk. And so they came running up with their guns, and then everyone's like, no, don't shoot. Welcome to the KnifeWife podcast. I'm Suz, married to Bob Terzuola. This podcast is about couples who live, love, and work together. And it has little to do with knives. Hello. Well, we're still here. We haven't learned to do a TikTok dance, so here goes another podcast. Say hi, Bob.
Hello. Happy KnifeWife podcast.
You going to write a song?
I could do that.
Okay. Today we're going to tell a story that some people know of a skeleton that we have named Samantha, and she traveled with us for a year. And I did a 365 project in which I put her on my blog every day with a new picture. But before I started that, because I didn't have a blog, Bob asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And what did I say, Bob?
You said, I want a skeleton. And I said, oh, really? A skeleton? Like to sit on the table or what are we talking about here?
I said life size. I wanted it articulated. I wanted to be able to pose her. I wanted to be a female. I wanted to pose her in different positions and, meet costumes. I could dress her up, which I did. And so one day a big box arrived from a very famous medical teaching company in Chicago that I happened to work for, which was pretty serendipitous. And I thought, why are they sending me something? Why are they sending me this box? I didn't realize inside it was Sam. And her legs came off and they went over her head so that she fit in this cardboard box, which had a great styrofoam clamshell that was completely custom made just for these skeletons. And that would be her traveling case for the year, most of the year.
A plastic skeleton. I just want to make sure everybody's sure.
Yes,
sure that it wasn't a real human being skeleton.
No, she wasn't. And so we started. We started the project on the Day of the Dead parade, and we brought her to her first Day of the Dead parade. She was all dressed up, and she had a Mexican blouse on, and she had a skirt, and she had flowers in her hair, which she didn't have hair then. She just had flowers in her skull.
Flowers on her head.
And we went to an Albuquerque Day of the Dead parade, which we loved. And our friend Charlie was with me, and he really got into this Day of the Dead thing. He's always done an ofrenda at his house, and we also do one. And so Sam started. We brought her to things around town. She went all over the world, and I'll get into that in a minute. The first place I took her after I had done several shoots with her was the dentist, because her teeth kept falling out. She was a medical model, and so she was made to have her teeth come out for teaching purposes. Well, whenever I'd set her up somewhere, the teeth would fall out, and I'd be crawling around the pavement looking for teeth. So I said, I got to take her. So I called my dentist, and I said, hi, I have a skeleton I'd like to bring in to have her teeth glued into her mouth with some dental epoxy so they don't fall out. Well, our dentist had a good sense of humor, so in she came. They lit her up with a blue light that they used to fix the thing. We have great pictures of her with the light coming out of her eyes and the sides of her head, and they glued her teeth in her mouth. And so that saved me a lot of crawling around on the ground looking for them. The first time she traveled was to a New York show, and the first picture I have of her is in our hotel room, and she's wearing the robe that they give you at the hotel room, and she's sitting on the bed like she's going to order room service. And that's one of my favorite pictures of her. Anyway, I had a backpack to carry her in the subway, and I carried her around New York, and she went to the show. And it was really cold out when we were there. It was November. And there were all these vendors on the street selling knockoff purses and New York hats. And I thought, oh, she needs a New York hat. So I walk up to this vendor with her in the backpack, and he sees this skeleton coming towards him. Well, in his culture, skeletons were not okay. He went running down the street. We were near Times Square. He literally went running down the street. He left his table and everything because he didn't want to be near the skeleton. So I finally had to find a vendor who would not run from the table, and we bought her hat, and she posed at the show with everybody, and she was a big hit. But we were also going to Rome after this and to the Milan show, and my grandson was going to join us. And so I picked him up. We used to have a woman that drove us in a party van from the airport to and from, and she met Sam. And so Sam and I went and picked up Ethan at the airport. He came with us, and the next day we left for Rome. And she made it in her box, in her clamshell. So, Bob, why don't you tell a story? So we wanted to take him to the Coliseum, and I had the backpack, and my grandson was carrying her. I have pictures of him carrying her in the backpack with the New York hat on. Anyway, so we went to the ticket counter at the Coliseum.
We went to the ticket counter, and we got tickets for us, and we said, is it okay if we bring the skeleton into the Coliseum? And the young lady said, sure, go ahead. I said, do I need to buy a ticket for her? Yeah. And she said, no, not at all. Don't worry about it. It's okay. So away we went, and we go up to I guess it's kind of a balcony or some walk around.
It's one of the tiers of the Coliseum.
Yeah, it's part of the tourist area. And there were other people up there from several countries. And they got so excited when they saw Sam, and they came over and they were asking, oh, can we take a picture with her? Can we do a picture with her?
And they asked me, how much do you charge?
How much do you charge? Yeah,
like nothing.
We weren't going to charge anything. I was thinking, well, maybe we could pay for the trip this way. But no, I didn't think so. So a lot of people came up, and then they took pictures of each other, and we helped them with the cameras.
And she had a stand that she
had
on
a
wheels.
Little stand. It's kind of a metal stand with a kind of tripod on the bottom, so she could stand up because skeletons don't stand up on their own. Anyway, we're right there by the railing, looking out over, and I take a picture of. I think it was just Susan and the skeleton together. Yep. I don't think Ethan was in the picture. Showing the background of the Coliseum, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and I turn around.
And before you got a tap on the shoulder, do you ever have a feeling that if someone's watching you or looking at you? I had this presence that like someone was watching us, and people were watching us because we had quite a crowd around her.
Yeah.
But I just felt something, whatever, and I turned around, and then you got a tap on the shoulder.
And there were several security guards there.
Like
all in
10.
uniform, and they started talking in rapid Italian. I can speak a little bit of Italian, but I couldn't follow what they were saying, so I asked them to slow down, and they said, you're not allowed to be here. You're not allowed to do that. It's disrespectful. You shouldn't be here with this skeleton, with this model, and so forth. At which point, Susan said...
I said, disrespectful? Disrespectful? I said, what about the thousands of people you have buried down there that you killed for fun? That's disrespectful. And they called me a bruta. I mean, I could understand what they were saying, and they did not like me anyway, but they had called me that. And I said, and you're disrespectful calling me names. At that point, our grandson, who was 14, he has big blue eyes. His eyes were the size of saucers because he's thinking, my grandmother's going to jail.
Grandma's going to jail. What am I going to do?
Right. And I had given him a card when we first got there where we were staying, and the man who owned the place, and I said, this is Gianni's number. He's like the Tony Soprano of Rome. If you need anything, if you get lost, if you get separated from us, keep this in your wallet because you just may need it. And I could see him reaching for his wallet to make sure he had his wallet because he was thinking of what I told him. And at that point, Bob, then they said to you,
well, I said, well, we were told we could bring her in here. And they said, no, they were going to fine us. They were going to, take us away someplace. I said, let me talk to the director. Who's the director?
Yeah, who's in charge?
So one of them broke off from the group and walked me down. I don't remember where we went. We went into some office with 3 or 4 people, and a woman came out, and we started talking. And I said, my wife is doing this artistic project. It's an art project that will, show the Colosseum in a very good light. And, we have the skeleton here as kind of a special artistic exhibit that we're doing. And my wife is a very famous artist. I guess I was fibbing just a little bit, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot.
Yeah, famous to none.
She
Mhm.
was a very famous artist, and we're going to do an exhibit back in the United States, and she's posting it on social media and so forth. And the woman said, well, okay, but
Didn't
we
she
think
say
you
you
should
need
take her out and, just probably not come back here.
Didn't she say you'd need a permit? You'd have to apply for a permit, and you
You'd
said,
have
"Well,
to-
I'll apply right now."
I said, I'll apply for a permit. I'm happy to do that. She said, I think she said, no, you can't do it here. You've got to do it at the Ministry of Tourism or something like that.
Mm.
So I said, okay, we'll just leave. Is that okay? And she said, yeah, okay, that's fine. So they escorted us.
No, not us, just you,
They
because
escorted
I
me.
was separate with Ethan, of which there were 7
That's
of them.
right. That's right. Yes.
And they
yes.
continued to call me names, and I continued to defy authority, which, kind of my thing. And Sam, and they were pointing to her, and everyone was coming up to us while you were gone and asking if they could take a picture. And these guys were getting madder and madder. And I said, see, it's a good thing. Buono, as I said. My grandson's eyes were still giant at this point. He didn't know what was going to happen. And they said, nope, you have to leave, and you're going to leave now. And they started to pull me by the arm, and I said, well, what about the skeleton? Can I take her with me, or you want her to stay here? No, they didn't thought of that. So we packed her up, and it's not easy to pack her up, and people were booing at this point at the Coliseum. They were booing them. And my grandson started to smile. I saw the look on his face, and he was like, and I said to him, in 20 years, you're going to say to your friends, my grandmother and I were thrown out of the Coliseum for bringing a skeleton here. And I said, and you won't be lying. It'll be the truth. So I said to them, where is my husband? And they said, well, that's none of your concern.
Oh, yes. I remember you said that.
And I said, it's not my concern? Really? So are you going to do his laundry? Are you going to pick up after him? Whose concern is it? Oh, they were so mad. So by that time, we had Sam in her backpack, and we were leaving the Coliseum. They all escorted me out. And what I didn't know is there's a line of demarcation where the National Landmark starts and then the streets of Rome start. So as soon as we got out and Bob came out another door, we were joined on the side of the Coliseum. We came out, and there were these street performers that you take pictures of, which was what they thought we were. And they're dressed up as gladiators. And they saw the skeleton coming towards them, and they started saying, come here, come over here. And what happened after that? I don't remember.
Well, they're the kind of people that, they're all dressed up as gladiators, and tourists come up to them and stand next to them and have their pictures taken for a fee. Well, I don't remember how much it is. And, but they were more interested in them taking their own pictures with Sam the skeleton. So they posed Sam.
They dressed her up.
They dressed her up in a cloak.
As a gladiator with the helmet, the feather on top.
And they posed with her, and the son of one of the gladiators, I guess there were 4 or 5 of them, he started taking pictures, and we took pictures, and we have pictures of them with Sam the skeleton. Well, they thought this was the greatest thing since peanut butter, and they just loved it, and they remembered her name and so forth.
And at the whole time we were doing this, the security guards were standing at the door of the Coliseum, sure that we were going to cross that line. But the gladiators knew where the line was. And so they knew better. But what I loved is we were using their phones to take pictures of Sam. I mean, it was completely role reversal.
Yeah,
anyway.
It was.
So it ended up to be a good day. No one went to jail. And Ethan was kind of tired. He had a little jet lag when we were there. So the next day I said, we're going to go on a double-decker bus around Rome. And I said, then Ethan, you can see all the great sights, and then you can pick. I do this a lot when we travel, is I pick, when I went by or something, I'll go, oh, I want to go back there. So we go out to the place where the bus station is. And I said to the person, do we need a ticket for the skeleton? And they said, no. So we went on the top of the double-decker bus, and it's open on the top. And I set her up, and I propped her elbow leaning out the window, and I put the headphones in so she could listen to the tour. And we sat there, and a bunch of English people got on the bus, and they came up, and they were a little offended that we had this skeleton, and what was that all about? And, they're sort of looking down their nose at us. And so we're riding along, and we are about to stop in front of the Coliseum.
And there were the gladiators. And they looked up and they started calling to Sam, Samantha. They called her Samantha.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha, we love you.
Ti amo, Samantha.
Ti amo, come down with us,
Come back to me.
The people on the bus and the people on the sidewalk were looking up and looking at the skeleton and looking at them. And they thought everybody had just flipped out and they had gone into Looney Land.
Or they were like, we didn't get the memo. And the English people on the bus, I said to them, you didn't know this was a famous skeleton, did you? And they had no words. They just couldn't believe what they were seeing. So anyway, so she made her way around Rome, and then we went to Milan, and she had a great time in Milan with all our friends there. We're going to go back there. She's not going this year. When we came back through, I don't know if it was JFK or I don't remember which New York airport we were at, but they stopped us because they thought she was a real skeleton. And so they would, x-ray her box going through luggage, and here this skeleton was in the box with her feet over her head. She was, in parts. And so they pulled us over to the side, and I thought, oh, we've left a knife in our bag or something. Oh, no. They said, well, we don't know if this is a real skeleton or not. I said, she's plastic. Look at her. She's plastic. I said, I couldn't have a real skeleton. I'd need a permit, which you'd need 30 permits to carry a real skeleton around the world, I learned. And so they said, well, until we can declare that this is not a real human skeleton, you'll have to wait. So we waited 6 hours for Fish and Game or someone to come. And I said, if we were able to have a knife, we could scrape her bones and you would see the plastic would curl up. Real bones would just chip. Nothing would happen. I said, but no one's allowed to have a knife here, right? So we waited. We missed our other flight. They put us on another flight. We got home late, but Sam did not get home with us. And so when we went to get our luggage, she was not there. And so I went to the airlines and gave her the ticket with her box. And they said, oh, well, we think she's still in New Jersey or New York or somewhere. And I said, oh, well, we're going to leave. We're not waiting. And so they couldn't tell me where she was for a long time. So long that I posted a thing on Instagram saying that she was missing. And at this point, Sam had a huge following. And she had a whole bunch of Facebook. She had a Facebook fan page. And so people put together on Illustrator or Photoshop a milk carton with her face on it and put missing, and they started flying it in all their social media things. Well, wouldn't you know it? I don't know. Moments after it started posting all over and it was blowing up that she was missing. The airline called me and said, we found her. We found your box, not her. We found your box. And eventually she made it home. And what a trip she had. Anyway, so we went back to Albuquerque, and I set up. At this point, I was at a point where I was taking pictures with my phone, and back then, 2013, the phones didn't have the cameras they have now, and so I had to get a big girl camera because I realized we needed some nice pictures, and that she was I always thought she was photogenic. Didn't you think she's photogenic?
I think she is very much.
So I set up a photo studio, and I started at home. Dressing her up in different garbs for holidays or whatever. And I have some beautiful pictures of her. I have some turkey wings I bought at a reservation. And there's a picture I have of a fallen angel where she has one wing. And I have another picture where she's looking at the tripod with my camera, looking through the camera on the tripod And that's one of my favorite pictures of her. But our neighbors had a construction company, so she got to be in a backhoe. There's pictures of her running the backhoe. She looks like this wild and crazy skeleton. I love those pictures. Let's see, what was her next trip? Then we went to the Slobodian Ranch, and the Slobodians were a lot of fun. He was a very famous sword maker, and Barbara was a great seamstress and engraver and made all kinds of things. So they had lots of costumes and hats and a horse for her to be on. And so she did all that. And I climbed a tree on their ranch, and I brought her up there and I posed her climbing the tree, got down, got the camera set up, and crash. She fell out of the tree. She broke her collarbone and a couple ribs. And my claim to fame is that, our claim to fame is that we are great orthopedic surgeons for plastic skeletons. Because Bob used little tiny screws to put her together, and we had to drill things, and we really had to put her back together. But while we were on that trip, there was this Calavera State Park, and Calavera means skull in Spanish. And I thought, what a perfect thing to get a picture of her in front of the sign. So Barbara and I drove out there with her in the back, and Barbara had a sunroof, and for a while we had her sticking out of the sunroof with her arms sticking out of the sunroof going down the highway in Northern California, and people are beeping at us and going crazy. So we get there, and I'm trying to set her up, and once again I feel those eyes are on me. Somebody's watching me. And I turn around, it's the park rangers. And they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we wanted to get a picture in front of the sign here because it's Calavera State Park." Apparently, neither of the park rangers knew what Calavera meant. And they didn't get the joke. They didn't think it was funny. They wanted us out. And I said, "Oh, I've been through this before. I'm not going to fight this." Okay. But we had already gotten some pictures over there before they came, so it was done. When I got home, I wrote a little letter to the Park Service and told them and sent them a picture of Sam and said, just let your rangers know what Calavera means. And that was the joke. But I never heard back. Anyway, so after that, I decided her box was sort of getting beat up and her styrofoam was getting kind of wonky. So I thought, I'm going to get a pelican case and I'm going to trick it out to fit her perfectly. So I did. I have pictures of me sticking toothpicks in the foam where she would, around her body, the outline of her body. And I tailor-made her pelican case. And the next trip is she was going to Germany, to Stuttgart and Berlin. And our friend, Jürgen Steinhau, said he was hiring a car for me for someone to drive us around for the day in Berlin so I could get photos taken. So she was ready to make her first trip, and all that was in the case was Sam. And I had asked how much, what was overweight, and she was about, 70, just over 70 pounds with the case. The case was really heavy. In hindsight, the box with the styrofoam was the lightest way to go. The people who shipped it knew what lightest way of shipping, the cheapest way, and that was probably the best way. But I thought, no, I'm going to look professional with my pelican case, So I get to Delta Airlines, and they weigh her, and they said, she weighs too much. This weighs too much. You have to take something out of this bag. So I opened it up, and much to the ticket agent's surprise, there was a skeleton in there. And I said, "What would you like me to take out? A hand, a leg?" I said, "I need all of this." And they said, "Well, it's too heavy to fly international." So it's 5:00 in the morning. So I call Bob and I tell him, "Come back to the airport." I forgot the guy's name who was the manager. He said, "I'll make sure that he gets this." And I said to myself, well, I'll call Jürgen or I'll email him on the plane and ask him to order another one sent to Germany. And I sent him the link from Amazon to show him which one I wanted. And got on the plane. Bob came. I wasn't there anymore. He came and picked up Sam and her pelican case, and they went home. And I went to Stuttgart first, and they couldn't get the skeleton to me soon enough in Stuttgart, so it went to Berlin first. So I didn't have a skeleton in Stuttgart for this whole thing. So I ordered a small one that I could get overnight, sent to my friend's house. And we took her around. We said, what are we going to name her? And I found out, perspective is everything in photography. I could take pictures of her. She looked just as big, but she didn't really stand up. She didn't have a stand. and her arms kept falling off. And my friend's husband went and got some Loctite and glued her arms on so they wouldn't fall out of the sockets because they kept falling out of the sockets. I'd go to take a picture and they'd fall out. So Thomas, rest in peace, fixed her up. And we went to the museum or the castle in Stuttgart, and the king and queen were Olga and Karl. So she got the name Karl Olga, and she became another skeleton I carried around for at least in Stuttgart, and it was fun. I took her to the zoo. She had a great time at the zoo. And I used to do like little ET things with her and stick her in if there was a basket or there was a display of stuffed animals, I'd hide her in there with just her head popping out and take a picture. And other people still wanted to take pictures with her. She would have been a lot easier to carry around the world, let me tell you. She weighed about half a pound. But no. So while I was in Stuttgart, I kept getting emails from Jürgen where he had gotten the new Sam, and he was posing her in his workshop, and she was running bandsaws and grinders and all this stuff. And he said, "Oh, I get the fun. I get this. This is great." And his wife had thought at first, she thought, "What is this woman bringing a skeleton?" But then she saw that it really was fun to pose her, and she always smiles. And so when we got there, the first thing I said is, "Do you have any epoxy? I need to glue her teeth into her mouth." He said, "What?" I said, "This isn't my first skeleton." So we glued her teeth into her mouth, and we went that day. And the next day we went to all over Berlin. She went to Checkpoint Charlie. She went to a very sad place, which was the Holocaust Museum. And they did come out and ask me to stop taking pictures. They weren't sure what I was doing, but they were very respectful. They were very different than other places had been. And I said, "Well, I'm a Jew." And I said, if you look at the picture, she's got her hands. I carried wire with me, and she had her hands over her eyes that she just couldn't look at all these people who had died. She just couldn't look at that. And I said, "That's what I'm trying to portray. But okay, out of respect, I will take it down, her down." And I did. And then I met the Berlin Bear, and the pretzel vendors gave her a pretzel, which of course she couldn't eat, but I did. I was to meet my driver at a certain place in Berlin. So I was walking with her on my hip and her stand in my other hand. And it was a lot to carry, but I got used to carrying her like a baby on my hip. And I was walking in front of the U.S. Embassy, which I didn't realize at first. I just thought it was a building. And all of a sudden I heard this crack, and her leg had fallen off on the sidewalk. But I didn't know what the crack was at first. And I looked around, and here are all these guys pointing their guns at me from the U.S. Embassy. They thought I had a firearm, or they thought I had a bomb or something, and they didn't know what the crack was either. They certainly weren't expecting a skeleton leg to be on the sidewalk. And so they came running up with their guns, and then everyone's like, no, don't shoot. They said, and it's just her leg laying there. And they looked at me like, this is the weirdest woman in the world. But anyway, so I couldn't find the nut that had fallen off that held her leg in. So all the people around me, everyone searched on the ground, and they found it. And when we put her leg back in and screwed it back in with this nut, everyone cheered when it was over. It was a wonderful thing, and I had her like putting her hand over her mouth, like blowing kisses to all of them, thanking them for finding her nut. And anyway, so that was her time in Germany. And then I was going to have them ship her to Paris because we were going to go to Paris later in the year. And I wanted her in Paris. In the meantime, we came home, and we had a few other things to go to, like we went to Chicago, right, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
And we took her to a Cubs game. And I'll let you tell that story. And I bought her a ticket online.
We had a ticket for a seat for her.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to sit watching the Cubs game with Samantha between us and take some pictures. But they wouldn't let her into the game. I said, "But we have a ticket. We bought the ticket for the seat." They said, "No, this is there was a costume or some sort of I'm not sure what objection they had, but they wouldn't let her in. So we had to store her in the I guess it was guest services department.
Yes, with luggage and other things that people
Luggage,
bring.
where you put luggage and stuff like that. And we watched the game, and we came back, and we retrieved her. And I tried to get a refund on the ticket, but no, they wouldn't do that. There no refund on a ticket.
Right. But we did get lots of pictures, and people took lots of pictures of her outside the Wrigley Field sign. And lots of people took pictures with her once we got outside the ballpark after it was over.
We went to Millennial Park.
We did at the Bean.
We went under the bean. We got some really nice pictures of her under the polished bean that's there.
And she began to have a huge following at that point from the Chicago trip. I had stickers and people that had her Facebook fan page and her Instagram account, and she began to get a huge number of followers then. And people began to send us gifts and things in the mail for her that were skulls and skeletons. I mean, like so much that I had huge containers of things stored in our house with gifts that she had gotten that I just had nowhere to put them.
We had some very interesting experiences with Sam. We had some negative ones, like at the Coliseum and at the Calavera Park and Wrigley Field, but we had some really positive ones also. Remember when we went to San Francisco?
Well, before that, I took her to Costco, and someone told me that they were selling articulated skeletons at Costco for like $29.99 that you could actually stand up, that I could pose. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. She needs friends. She's very lonely. So I went to Costco, and I would put her in the part where you put the baby in the cart. And she fit nicely because she's very small, very thin. And so she was in there, and I'm coming out of the car, and there's a car full of, help me, Bob, with the name of this. These women were wearing, not Habibs, they were completely covered in black. Their
Burkas?
Faces, I don't know what those are called. Do you know what those are called?
Burkas.
No. Burkas? Anyway, they were in the back seat of the car, and they saw her, and they just went peeling away, afraid of her. And I'd had this happen before. So I was like, okay. So I go in Costco, and I walk over to and I get the last 3 skeletons. And I'm thinking, what am I going to name them? I'm calling them the Costco Brothers already. It's a perfect Italian name, the Costco Brothers. And I go into the refrigerated section because I actually had to get something to eat. And I bought some things. And as I came out, here were the people that were in the car before. And they see her, and the women scream and go running out of Costco. They leave their cart. They just booked it out of there. And I thought, oh boy, talk about causing, people were already coming up to me, and I was prepared. I was giving out the stickers that said, I met Sam and everything. And so this woman comes walking towards me in a Costco outfit, or her vest and her name tag, and she has something in her hand. And I thought, oh, she's going to kick me out of here, So will I be buying these anyway? So I explained to her what I was doing, and I said, I'm sorry I caused such a stir. And she said, oh, no problem. She said, actually, we were watching you from upstairs. We think that corporate would like to know about you, and that if you're going to use our skeletons, that maybe they would like to do an article for you in their magazine. I said, really? So you're not throwing me out? No. So she gave me her name and the corporate office name, and we went home, and I contacted them, and they said, yes, we think it's a great idea. And so I told them that we were having a naming contest on social media to name the brothers, the Costco Brothers. They love that. They said, we'd like you to do this was August, we'd like you to do a photo shoot for Halloween if you could. And I said, well, I'm, worked in the movies. I think I can handle that. And so I didn't have anything in August for Halloween. And so I had a neighbor, Wendy. And Wendy, if you're listening, I know you are. Thank you. We were one of my greatest supporters during this whole project. She had a whole bunch of fake pumpkins and gravestones and all kinds of things because she had 5 kids. So I went to her garage, and I raided it and came over, and I tricked out the house. And I have the picture that they ended up using is Sam poking around the big pillars in the front of our house. The 3 Costco brothers were dressed up, and one had a snorkel and mask and a blow-up floaty, and the other one, I don't know, I don't remember what they were all dressed as. Anyway, and then I thought, oh, it would be really cool at night to hang them from the tree, too. We had a big tree in our front yard. And so I got it lit underneath, but I had to wait for it to get dark. And I had the switch for the light was on the front porch. It wasn't out at the tree. And so I just waited for it to get dark enough and to underlight them. And I flipped the switch on, and I had no idea my other neighbors were walking down the street. The light went on, shone in the tree. It's August. There's 3 skeletons hanging there. They screamed and went running home. They thought, who is this wacko that lives there with these skeletons? And why? It's not even Halloween. It's August, and it's hot in Albuquerque. So those were the Costco skeletons, and I still have a copy of the magazine. I don't know if they send a magazine out anymore. I'm a member, but I never get one anymore. So so Costco was really fun. But then she got even more popular. And so my friend sent her to Paris, to our hotel in Paris. And so we left for Paris in September. And she met us at our hotel, and we said we were expecting a package there. And we had this little tiny European room, and there was barely enough room for the 3 of us. Anyway, so we took her all over Paris, but one of the most memorable things was Bob. He said, you've got to get her in the middle of the Champs-Élysées. And so I said,
with the Arc de Triomphe behind her.
Yes.
And we did.
And how did you do that? Because it wasn't easy, because there's about 10 million cars driving by, beeping their horns. And
I just carried her over there and planted her right in the middle and prayed a little prayer and got out of the way. And cars were passing by, but then we took the pictures.
Yeah, we got the pictures. And so she's centered in the middle of the Arc de Triomphe. And we also took her to, another part of Paris where you can see it's a good vantage point for the Eiffel Tower. I mean, we took her to
Trocadero.
the Trocadero, yes. And we took her to the Tour Eiffel, but I didn't know if you had a tripod that you needed a permit in Paris to take a picture. And I was setting it up, and
the gendarmes.
The gendarmes showed up and said, well, you can't really take pictures here. Hurry up and take your picture because you need a permit. If you're doing an art project or you're a professional photographer, you need a permit. So I was used to that too. I'm like, okay. But they were nice. They let us take pictures, and she went all over Paris and she wowed them. And I kept handing out the stickers that I met Sam, and, I'd see people all over Paris with the stickers on their jackets or their shirts, and it was a fun thing. And then the project ended at a Day of the Dead parade. And we used to have a float in the Day of the Dead parade in Albuquerque. Now, Sam, at this point and we were going to leave her. I forgot this part, Bob. Remember we were going to leave her on a park bench in Paris and put a note on her, take me home and give me a good home. And both of us looked at each other the last day we were there. And I said, I can't leave her here on a park bench. And Bob said, no, I feel bad about that. Now, we're adults. This isn't our imaginary friend. This isn't our teddy bear. I mean, we could have left her, but we couldn't. So we shipped her home. So then we had 2 Sams at home. And the one Sam had her head opened so many times by TSA because they always felt I had contraband in that skull, which I said to one person, well, the woman in the airport in New York, I said, don't you think if I was going to have contraband, I wouldn't put it in a skeleton's skull? I mean, it kind of causes a little attention, and I would want to fly under the radar. And she said to me, well, not everyone carries a skeleton around the world. I said, exactly. Now you get it. So we ended at the Day of the Dead parade, and Bob rigged up something for the Costco brothers, and they sat on the back as a bride and groom, because you don't know if they're boys or girls. And Sam 1 and Sam 2 were dressed in the back seat of my VW Bug with the top down. And we had a skeleton, some dogs, and we had Carl Olga with us. We had everybody in the car. And we were a big hit of the parade that year, and we were steampunk, so they were all steampunked out. It was wonderful, and I didn't write the book. I've been certainly prodded and poked to write the book, and until recently, I started writing the book. And I thought, well, I'm going to try it out on the podcast first and see how it goes. But Sam has been so many places. I mean, she's been to Denver 3 times. She's been, let's see, I have them written down. She's been to California. She's been to Milan, Rome, New York, Stuttgart, Berlin, Chicago, Durango, Vegas. She went to Vegas. Remember we took her to Vegas to the, what was it?
Yep. Yep.
with the gondola. What hotel is that? The
That was
Bellagio?
the Venetian.
Oh, the Venetian. I rode with her in the gondola that goes around, that kitschy gondola, but the driver sung opera to her, and I think she really liked it. So yeah, she's been to Vegas. She's been to the vet. She's been to the doctors. She got a pelvic exam, which was really funny. I have pictures of that. She's been to Texas. She went to Rosa's Cantina. She got stopped at the border. I was taking pictures of her on the border with the big wire fence. And once again, I felt those eyes were upon me. And I turned around, and here's a bunch of border control guys. And I explained to them what I was doing, and they were very nice and very respectful. But they said, no, you got to stay within 10 feet of the fence. So you can take pictures, but she's got to be within 10 feet of the fence. And they were it ended up, one was from Chicago originally. And so that was a very nice interchange in Texas. She did pretty well. But what can I say? That's the story of Sam. She used to have a Facebook fan page. And this is the last story. Facebook contacted me, I don't know, a year after the project, and said that she needed a state ID. And I wrote to Facebook back, and I said, she's a plastic skeleton. She doesn't have a state ID. She's never going to have a state ID. But my friends in the movie, when they heard this, said, well, we'll make her an ID. And I said, no, that's okay, thanks. I don't want to go to federal prison for, a plastic skeleton. I remember that's too much. That's over the top. So anyway, so you can find her on Instagram. She's under Sammy Sam Skeleton. And she doesn't have a Facebook fan page anymore. She lost all her fans. They shut her down. But the book is coming, and I'm writing it every day for about 15 minutes every day. Many, many stories. A lot of fun. And I have to say that in this podcast, this is about my spouse helping me with my project. I mean, he carried a 42-pound skeleton around the world with me and supported me in the whole deal. And when we finished, we had a big party at our house, and all our friends and everybody came who'd been involved. And someone baked a great cake, Wendy, again. She's the queen of cakes. She made a sugar skull cake, and my other friend made cupcakes with sugar skulls, and we had a grand time. And I thanked Bob then, because it's not every guy that would help his wife carry a skeleton around the world for a year.
Not every guy that's married to a Susan like that either.
That's true. Well, I'm not eccentric Suz for nothing. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll put pictures of Sam on the KnifeWife fan page so that you can see some of these adventures.
Goodbye, Sam.
Bye for now. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please share this with a friend and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. Please support our efforts through Patreon at TheKnifeWife, and for all Terzuola goodness, go to Terzuola.net. And remember, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Comments and questions can be made on Instagram at The KnifeWife Podcast or our Facebook group, The KnifeWife Podcast. And if you're a couple who work together and would like to be on our podcast, tell us about yourself with an email at eccentricsuz.com or terzuola.net.